I'm 81 years old, and most mornings I wake up before the sun, not because I want to, but because my body doesn't remember how to sleep the way it used to. I lie there for a while, listening to quiet, and a thought always comes back to me. It's simple but heavy. I've spent so many years worrying about things that, in the end, didn't matter. Things I thought mattered, things I thought I had to protect, defend, or control. I kept holding on, and I see now that holding on cost me more than I realized. I'm not telling this for sympathy. I'm telling it because I don't have much time left, and when time grows short, the truth stops waiting. I've always thought of myself as careful, responsible, dependable. Those words followed me through my youth and middle age, and I clung to them like they were shields. I worked hard. I said yes when it seemed like I should, and I said no when I was told to. I made choices that seemed reasonable at the time. But I see now that in my efforts to do the right thing, I let go of things that mattered more quietly. In my 20s, I believed life was something you earned later. Happiness, rest, presence. They were things to be postponed. You worked first. You saved first. You waited. I got my first steady job at 23. My father nodded approvingly when I told him where I'd been hired, and that approval felt heavier than I knew. I told myself it was just a stepping stone, temporary. But temporary things, over time, became permanent. I woke early. I dressed neatly. I showed up on time. I learned how to be useful, how to keep my opinions soft. People liked me for that. They relied on me. They expected it. And slowly, I expected it myself. I met my wife when I was 27. She had a laugh that filled rooms without trying. She had dreams that felt large and urgent when she spoke of them. I loved that about her, deeply, but I assumed there would be time for all of it later. We married quickly, not out of rush, but because it made sense. We needed stability. We needed to build something. That word, build, followed us everywhere. We were always building, rarely living in what we had already made. Our conversations were practical. Rent, bills, groceries, schedules. What came next? We told ourselves this was adulthood, that this was responsibility. It made sense. It felt safe. But it wasn't everything. I didn't notice what was missing yet. In my 30s, I worked harder. I stayed later. I volunteered for extra responsibilities. Saying no felt dangerous. Saying no might mean losing ground. And I was always afraid of slipping backward. My wife would ask, sometimes quietly, "Do you have to work this weekend?" I would answer honestly, "It's just for now." That sentence did more damage than I realized. Birthdays passed. Family dinners shortened. Trips postponed. There was always a reason, always another task, always one more responsibility. I didn't feel like I was choosing work over life. I thought I was protecting it. Children came. 2 of them. I loved them. But from a distance I didn't recognize at the time. I knew their schedules, their grades, their routines. I didn't know their hearts. I thought providing was the same as participating. It wasn't. When my son asked me to come watch him play, I said, "Next time, I promise." There were many next times. I missed most of them. When my daughter wanted to talk late at night, I said we could talk in the morning. Mornings were always rushed. The conversations never happened. I didn't think these were failures. They were postponements, harmless, temporary. Life felt long then. Time felt generous. In my 40s, I started feeling tired in ways sleep couldn't fix. I told myself it was normal. Everyone felt this way. This was the cost of being reliable. People depended on me, and I took pride in it. I wore exhaustion like proof of worth. My wife grew quieter. Not angry, just quieter. That worried me less than it should have. Silence can look like peace if you don't look closely. We stopped talking about dreams. We talked about logistics. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at old photographs. Not smiling, just looking. I didn't ask her what she was thinking. I was afraid of the answer. The years moved forward. Promotions, raises, titles that sounded impressive when spoken aloud. People said I was doing well. I nodded. Inside, something felt absent. Success is strange. It fills your calendar and empties your life at the same time. The cost came quietly, in missed phone calls, in postponed conversations, in relationships that learned to exist without me. By the time I noticed, it felt too late to stop the machine I had spent decades building. The turning point didn't arrive with drama. It came with a phone call. My wife had been unwell for months. Nothing dramatic, just tired. A cough that wouldn't leave. We postponed doctor visits because there was always something else. When the diagnosis came, it felt unreal, like it belonged to someone else's life. We sat in the car afterward, neither of us speaking. I want to say something meaningful, but I didn't know how. Illness changes how time behaves. Plans vanish. Priorities shift without asking permission. I stayed home more. I canceled meetings. I said no. The world didn't collapse when I did. That realization came too late to comfort me. We talked more than we had in years. Real conversations. Honest ones. Sometimes she would look at me with sadness that wasn't about the illness, but about the years behind us. One night she said softly, "I always thought we'd get to us eventually." I didn't know how to answer. There was no defense, only truth. She passed away quietly. No dramatic final words. Just a long exhale, then silence. I held her hand and realized how unfamiliar it felt to have nothing else demanding my attention. After the funeral, people checked in, then returned to their lives. Mine had stopped moving forward and started looping backward. That's when clarity arrived. Pieces of memory I couldn't escape. Every later I had promised. Every conversation postponed. Every moment I assumed could wait. They were gone. Permanently. Nothing could reclaim them. My children visited less. Not from cruelty. They had lives of their own. I had raised them well, and they succeeded. The house became too quiet. Not peaceful, just empty. I tried to fill time, hobbies, reading, routines, but presence cannot be replaced. You only notice absence more clearly. What hurt most wasn't failure. It was realizing I had done everything right and still missed what mattered. I followed the rules I was given, stayed responsible, dependable, and somehow life passed without me fully inhabiting it. There are things that cannot be repaired at 81. You cannot return to conversations that never happened. You cannot become the version of yourself someone needed decades ago. Time doesn't negotiate. If you are listening, I'm not asking you to make dramatic changes. I don't believe in sudden transformations anymore. Life doesn't work that way. I only wish I had understood one quiet truth earlier. The days you keep waiting for are the days you are already living. I thought presence could be postponed. I thought connection could wait. I thought there would be a clear moment when life began. It never came. Instead came years filled with preparation, but very little arrival. I don't hate my life. There were good moments. Love existed. Laughter happened. But it was thinner than it should have been, more fragile than I realized. Now, when I sit alone in the evenings, I don't replay my successes. I replay the small moments I dismissed. Questions not answered. Hands not held. Chances to listen that I was too busy to notice. If this means anything to you, sit with it quietly. You don't need to fix anything tonight. Just notice what you are postponing. I don't have much time left, and I've made peace with that. Acceptance comes easier when resistance is exhausted. This is the truth of one old man who thought life would begin after he finished preparing for it. It didn't.